watching South Asia Newsline, and at the top stories we are tracking for you on Wednesday, the 11th of March. India condemns Pakistan airstrikes on Afghanistan at UN. India assures LPG supply as Iran war sparks panic buying. And POGB nationalist leaders push for political alliance. And now for all the details. India has strongly condemned Pakistan's airstrikes on Afghanistan, calling them a violation of international law and accusing Islamabad of hypocrisy for carrying out attacks during the holy month of Ramzan. Speaking at a meeting of the United Nations Security Council, India's permanent representative to the UN, Harish Parvathaneni, described the attacks as a flagrant violation of international law, the UN Charter and the principle of state sovereignty. Parvathaneni said it was hypocritical to invoke Islamic solidarity while conducting airstrikes during the holy month of Ramzan that have reportedly killed civilians. India reiterated its support for calls by Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, urging all sides to respect international humanitarian law and ensure the protection of civilians. According to the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, at least 185 civilians were killed in these strikes as of March 6, with more than half of the victims being women and children. The attacks have also displaced over 100,000 people, raising humanitarian concerns.
India strongly condemns the airstrikes on Afghan territory, which are flagrant violations of international law and the UN Charter and the principle of state sovereignty. It's hypocritical to espouse high principles of international law and Islamic solidarity on the one hand, while mercilessly carrying out airstrikes during the holy month of Ramadan that have killed 185 innocent civilians as of 6th March, around 55% of whom are women and children, and displaced over 100,000 according to the UNAMA on the other.
And the White House on Tuesday said the United States has granted India temporary permission to import Russian oil as global energy markets face disruptions linked to the conflict in West Asia. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the decision was approved by US President Donald Trump and US Treasury Department. She described India as a good actor, noting that India had previously complied with US directives to halt purchases of sanctioned Russian oil. According to the White House, the current waiver was granted because the shipments were already in transit and would not provide significant financial benefit to Russia. Earlier, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent also confirmed that Washington would temporarily allow India to accept Russian oil to address a short-term global supply gap. The decision comes as tensions escalate in the Middle East, with the conflict involving Iran, the United States and Israel, disrupting global energy supply chains. In India, authorities have begun reviewing fuel conservation measures while increasing production of liquefied petroleum gas to ensure stable domestic supplies.
And the President and the Secretary of Treasury and the whole national security team came to this decision because our allies in India, as you know, Lalit, have been good actors and have previously stopped buying sanctioned Russian oil. So as we work to appease this temporary gap of oil supply around the world because of the Iranians, we have temporarily permitted them to accept that Russian oil. And this Russian oil was already at sea. It was already out on the water. So this short-term measure, we don't believe it will provide significant financial benefit to the Russian government at this time.
And concerns over energy supplies are growing in India as the ongoing conflict in the Middle East begins to ripple through global fuel markets. While the government insists there is no shortage of cooking gas, long queues have formed outside distribution centers and airline ticket prices are rising as carriers grapple with higher fuel costs. You have a report.
Residents across parts of India lined up outside LPG distribution centers on Wednesday, fearing a shortage of cooking gas as tensions escalate in the Middle East. The concerns follow disruptions to regional energy supplies after Qatar halted production following strikes by Iran in the Gulf region. Qatar is India's largest supplier of liquefied natural gas, and the disruption has triggered worries about the availability of household cooking fuel.
3 बजे यहाँ भोर में हम लोग जो है यहाँ पे आ गए हैं और ये 10 दिन से क्रिएट हुआ ऐसा मामला 10 दिन से बुक करने पे हाकर भी नहीं घर पे ले जा रहा है ऑफिस पे जाने पे ये हो रहा है कि गोदाम पे जाइए गोदाम पे मिलेगा और गोदाम पे यहाँ पे आने के बाद अगर समय से नहीं आएंगे तो आधे लोग लौट जा रहे हैं मिल नहीं रहा है.
However, India's oil minister Hardeep Singh Puri has sought to reassure consumers, saying there is no shortage of LPG for households. The government has also invoked emergency powers and directed refineries to maximize LPG production to stabilize supplies and prevent shortages.
परेशानी ये हो रही है कि कल आए थे ठीक है कल भी आए इन लोगों ने मना कर दिया कि 12 के बाद टंकी नहीं मिलेगी सामने वाले ने चूल्हे पे खाना बनाया कल परेशान हुए कल भी हम.
Meanwhile, the conflict is also affecting air travel. Air India has announced a phased increase in fuel surcharges on both domestic and international flights as aviation fuel prices surge. Airspace restrictions linked to the Middle East conflict have also complicated routes for Indian carriers. Passengers say the rising fares are adding to financial pressure.
के रेट बढ़ने की वजह से बहुत दिक्कत आ रही है और जो बेचारे जो गरीब है उनका जेब में बहुत भार पड़ रहा है और उनको मजबूरी में ओवर पे करके ट्रैवल करना पड़ रहा है तो गवर्नमेंट के उसके ऊपर थोड़ा ध्यान देना चाहिए और रेट्स थोड़े कम करने चाहिए और लोगों की थोड़ी मजबूरी समझनी चाहिए.
A senior political leader from Pakistan-occupied Gilgit-Baltistan has called for a united alliance of nationalist parties, arguing that the region needs stronger local representation to safeguard its political and economic rights. We have a report.
Speaking in an interview with a local journalist, the leader said the people of Pakistan-occupied Gilgit-Baltistan must prioritize their identity and rights as residents of the region. According to him, the people of PGB have remained deprived of basic rights for decades because of what he described as unnatural representation by national political parties. To address this issue, he proposed forming a joint alliance among several nationalist groups in the region.
ये कैसे हो सकता है? ये बिल्कुल एक गैर फितरी नुमाइंदगी है और इस गैर फितरी नुमाइंदगी की ही वजह से 78 साल बल्कि 80 साल होने को हैं कि हम बुनियादी इंसानी हुकूक से आज तक महरूम रहे. वो इसलिए रहे कि हमारे गिलगित बल्तिस्तान के लोग पाकिस्तान से अंधी मोहब्बत में, और अच्छी बात है मोहब्बत करना चाहिए, उस अंधी मोहब्बत में ये सोचना ही भूल गए कि उससे अलहदा भी हमारा कोई तशख्खुस है, कोई वजूद है, कोई तारीख है, कोई कल्चर है, कोई हिस्ट्री और कोई हुकूक है. वो ये भूल गए. ये हुकूक न पंजाबी भूला है, न सिंधी भूला है, न पठान भूला है, न बलोची भूला है. लेकिन हम जो गिलगित बल्तिस्तान के लोग हैं, बहैसियत गिलगित बल्तिस्तानी हम अपने हुकूक भूल चुके हैं.
During the interview, the leader also criticized policies imposed on the region, related to land reforms and the Revenue Authority Act. The leader said that, the parties plan to mobilize public support across Pakistan-occupied Gilgit-Baltistan to demand greater political rights and local representation.
And a court in Colombo has ordered that the bodies of 84 Iranian sailors killed in an attack on an Iranian warship be handed over to the embassy of Iran. Local media say the ruling followed a request from police in the southern port city of Gale, where the bodies are currently being kept at the National Hospital morgue. The sailors were aboard the Iranian naval vessel Iris Dana when it was reportedly struck by a torpedo fired from a US submarine while returning from a naval exercise organized by India. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka has granted 30-day visas to 208 crew members from another Iranian naval vessel, Iris Bushehr, which suffered engine trouble in nearby waters. Officials say the Sri Lankan government is in contact with the Iranian embassy as it awaits further instructions from Tehran. Meanwhile, Sri Lankan authorities have sharply increased fuel prices following a surge in global crude oil prices triggered by escalating conflict in West Asia. Petrol prices have been raised by 25 Sri Lankan rupees per litre and diesel has increased by 22 rupees. Officials say the new prices took effect from midnight to prevent panic buying and hoarding as global energy markets remain volatile. And tensions between the United States and Afghanistan's Taliban authorities are rising after Washington formally accused the Taliban government of wrongful detention of American citizens. The Taliban has called the move regrettable and says it prefers dialogue to resolve the dispute. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced the designation on Monday, urging Afghan authorities to immediately release detained American citizens. Among those the United States says remain in custody are Mahmoud Habibi and Dennis Coyle. The Taliban responded Tuesday, saying it wants to resolve the issue through dialogue with Washington. The dispute comes as concerns grow in the international community over Afghanistan's humanitarian crisis and the Taliban's policies. Recently, at a meeting of the United Nations Security Council, U.S. called for international aid to Afghanistan to be carefully evaluated, citing Taliban restrictions on women and girls. He also raised concerns that female Afghan staff working with the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan are being barred by the Taliban from attending their offices. Amid this, humanitarian situation continues to worsen in Afghanistan.
د افغانستان اسلامي امارت د بهرنیو چارو وزارت د امریکا د متحده ایالاتونو وروستۍ پریکړه چې افغانستان یې د ناسم توقیف د ملاتړي دولت په توګه نومولی دی د تعصب وړ بولي. د افغانستان حکومت څرګندوي چې د هیڅ هیواد اتباع د معاملې د وسیلې په توګه نه دي نیول سوي. ځینې کسان د نافذه قوانینو د سرغړونې په تور نیول سوي دي چې په ډیری مواردو کې د قانوني پروسې تر بشپړېدو وروسته په عادي ډول خصوصي سوي دي.
That's all in tonight's edition. We will see you same time tomorrow. Good night.